All right, welcome back, everyone. We're in block party number 44, and we're entertaining some pretty cool conversation about, what's this all about? Collective intelligence and, Radish and the press conference and snack bar and the conversation. We haven't even talked about the conversation yet. We'll get to that. But but the first question is, and this is something everybody wants to know when you first start talking about it, who are you and why are you here? Those are the two fundamental questions, right?
Yeah.
So, um, but um, why? Let me start with why am I here? Why am I doing all this? Because I spend, many hours every week on Zoom video conferences and work very hard at organizing all this. Marco probably spends even more hours than I do. So if you come at the middle of the night, you'll often find Marco here, or Marco and Christopher, the super cool guy up in Canada, and Claudia, and all of us, BJ, Linda. There's this kind of whole community, and it was sort of like this online community center where people come and go, and hang out. And if it's late at night, sometimes people are just hanging. They're just hanging out and talking about whatever, right? And right. And other times it's more
Okay.
structured, like the press conference. When we did
Uh,
that first press conference, oh my goodness, there we had like 100, close to 100 presentations lined up, and we were trying to stay on this 2-minute cycle. And then one of the big lessons there is 2 minutes is not enough. So anyway, but why am I here? What's it all about? So after working a number of years in corporate America, and the story of my life is kind of going back and forth between, for lack of a better word, kind of the American way of, working for a corporation, making money and climbing the ladder and that sort of thing, and sometimes doing a startup, and getting back to my true love in life, which is, um, helping people, feeding people, ending hunger, um, ending poverty, and um, more broadly, saving the planet. Mother Earth is under just incredible assault right now. And truth be told, she may not make it. We may not make it. And so, um, also being my father's son, my dad, after working, his career, he, retired early and just focused on the community, right? How do we, the, he had moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1960, coming from Ohio, and, worked as an engineer his career. And, but both before he retired and especially after retiring, he focused on how do we make this a better place? How do we make the world a better place? But his focus was mostly the San Francisco Bay Area, which had lots of problems and lots of opportunities. And um, for example, in the town where we lived most of my growing up, Albany, California, just north of Berkeley, um, which is on the water and a beautiful little town, they wanted to put in this big multi-billion-dollar gambling casino. This was in the wave of casinos that hit the country, and my dad said, no, no, that's just going to screw up a lot of people's lives. Gambling is a terrible addiction. A lot of poor people are going to come to the casino and blow their meager reserves. And so he started a whole campaign to stop the casino. And the mafia tried to kill my father. They sent a hitman to kill my father,
mm,
and they were not successful. Uh, my dad messed the dude up and sent him back to the mafia, damaged goods, return to sender, and don't try this again. And he kept going, and he stopped the damn multi-billion-dollar casino. And it wasn't just the mafia that was against him, city government and business interests and everything. They all wanted this huge development and all that. And so I saw my dad, and when he started that movement, it was him alone, just by himself. And I was there with him every night, helping him draft letters to the editor, letters here and there, preparing for city council meetings and all that. And so I saw firsthand how one person can change things, right, and make a difference. And he was also a leader in the Sierra Club. So he was program chair of the East Bay Sierra Club dinners, which I then became years later, and still am, but now we've taken a big pause because of COVID. Um, but these monthly Sierra Club dinners where he'd organize a speaker, and dozens to over 100 people would show up, and we'd have a really great presentation and conversation and community. And so I've seen my dad building community and making real change happen in the world in a number of different ways. So he's been an inspiration for me my whole life. And I, when I was 14 years old, I went to live in Spain for 1 year with Spanish relatives of mine, distant relatives from Spain. And so I learned to speak Spanish, and it was a whole different culture, so different from American culture. And but there was also a lot of poverty in Spain. This is in the early 80s. Unemployment was around 20%, and you had whole populations of gypsies who were basically just living in parks and living on the street. And it was just this terrible poverty. And of course, we're just right across the water from Africa. And this was, a period of famines that were becoming widely known. And it was like, what the hell kind of world am I in? It was very different from privileged suburban California, right? And so my world kind of got turned upside down. I came back to the United States, and my auntie introduced me to some friends of hers who were doing this volunteer program in Latin America called Los Amigos de las Americas, the Friends of the Americas, where high school and college students get trained over the course of the school year and then go down and spend 8 weeks in one Latin American country or another working on a project. And so I got way into latrine construction and health education in rural Mexico as a teenager, and went from community to community and helped form rural health committees and organized latrine construction programs, and really stepped into my power as a teenager. But it was kind of this back and forth between going to these awesome cultures of Spain and Mexico, and other countries in Latin America, and then coming back to the United States, where there's a certain story that's very individualistic, very materialistic, egocentric and whatnot. And so it's just been this whole journey. And my big passion in life for most of my life has been, how do we feed everyone? How do we make sure everyone has enough to eat? And but having studied environmental engineering and climatology from a relatively early age, and seeing just how exponential planetary overheating is just progressing, I became painfully aware that our problems are really, really big, and they're growing exponentially, and we're heading towards this major collision with destiny if we don't make some major transformations happen. And so after I left Microsoft and put my focus back on food, after having invited Bill Gates into a conversation about feeding everyone, he was not interested. I mean, simply not interested. Here I was, his corporate strategy manager, and here he is, positioning himself as Mr. Philanthropy, right? And I'm highly critical of Bill Gates publicly, because I know the potential that guy has. He has tremendous potential to change the world, and he's squandering it. So I never reveal anything personal about him that's not already publicly known. But as a public figure, I definitely am highly critical. So here I was focusing on, how do we feed everyone? And I was working on this kind of model for how do we optimize agriculture and food distribution and all that. And along comes the legalization of cannabis to the state of Washington and the state of Colorado. in 2012, right? And so the night that President Obama was reelected for his second term, November 2012, the states of Washington and Colorado voted to legalize cannabis, not just medical, but for across the board, just legal. If you're over 21, you want to get high, you can buy weed. And so I saw a huge opportunity to build a cannabis business, but with a radical new focus, that all the profits generated, I said, listen, all of my share of the profits will go to ending hunger, right? Because that's my big passion. And out of that, a whole bunch of cool stuff started to happen. And the media came and swarmed to me, and they nicknamed me the Bill Gates of Bud, because I became kind of, for about a year, I was the leader of the conversation in the media and around the world. And I'll give you a taste of that, which was a big part of my inspiration for the press conference. So if everyone's game, BJ and Marco and Linda have already seen this, but it's worth seeing over and over. It's just a few minutes here. Okay, thanks, BJ. Let me go ahead and get this up on the screen. Let's
see here. Yeah. After you get that up, if I remember, I have a question.
Oh yeah, well, no, go ahead. Go ahead and shoot, Marco, and then we'll show the video.
Can't remember it now.
That's all right. It'll come to you.
It'll come.
But okay, here, let me screen share. And I'm just going to let this play for like 8 minutes, and I'll probably refill my coffee or something and say hello to my mother-in-law in the meantime. But please enjoy for the next 8 minutes. But here's the context. So 6 months after we had voted to legalize, we still didn't have any word from Washington, D.C., from the federal government. Are they going to allow us to proceed, or are they going to shut us down? Because it's still federally illegal to this day. So former Mexican President Vicente Fox, a friend of mine, I called him up because I'd worked with him years earlier on ending the digital divide in Mexico. I called him up and I said, look, your country's getting destroyed by criminal drug cartels and the drug war. We've got a chance to darle vuelta la tortilla, to turn the tortilla over and turn the tables on this. And here it is. And so he said yes, and he flew up. And we changed the course of history, as you'll see. And I'll just play 8 minutes of this, but anyway, the bottom line, the main lesson here is we can change the world. My dad did it in the San Francisco Bay Area. We did it at this press conference, and we're doing it right now with collective intelligence, with feeding everyone, with cooling the planet. So anyway, here's a really good concentrated sample.
To paradigm.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Before I introduce our distinguished guests, I would like to begin with a quote from the late astrophysicist Carl Sagan. "The illegality of cannabis is outrageous, an impediment to full utilization of a plant which helps produce the serenity and insight, sensitivity and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world." Carl Sagan. But by making cannabis illegal, we have instead turned it into a tool for violence, exploited by criminals and organized crime. spanning many countries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a unique moment in history. The Berlin Wall of the prohibition of cannabis is weak, and it is crumbling as we speak. And just as happened in Berlin in 1989, the old guards who used to protect the wall of cannabis prohibition are laying down their weapons and walking away. What remains to be done is to safely and systematically dismantle the wall of prohibition and replace it with a system of laws, international agreements, regulations, and standards to ensure a prosperous and, above all else, safe cannabis industry. We are moving forward. The states of Washington and Colorado are leading the way. We have waited long enough for some sort of a green light from Washington, D.C., telling us that it is okay to proceed. In fact, the silence from our nation's capital has been deafening. We are moving forward with our plans to build a national and eventually international network of cannabis businesses spanning the production, processing, distribution, and retail of cannabis and cannabis-based products. Our network will span both the medical and the social use cannabis markets. As a first step in building this national network, as CEO of Diego Pellicer Incorporated, I am proud to announce that we have acquired the rights to the Northwest Patient Resource Center, headed by Mr. John Davis, who I will introduce shortly. We are also in the final stages of acquiring a smaller but equally professional chain of medical cannabis dispensaries in the great state of Colorado. With these acquisitions, along with other acquisitions in the works from California to Washington, we are creating the first national brand of retail cannabis. We have also created the first risk-mitigated investment vehicle for investing directly in this $100 billion industry, which is growing by the day. This is a crucial development which will enable us to expand our business model into new markets. Our expansion will be cautious and measured, as my colleague John Davis will discuss. Next, it is my pleasure and profound honor to introduce to you a man who has dedicated his life to transforming his country and our world into a more peaceful, loving, and prosperous planet. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the first freely elected president of Mexico, Señor Presidente.
Congratulations for that position. This state of Washington, has decided to lead a new path, a path to change the paradigm by legalizing medical and social use of cannabis. In Mexico, we welcome this initiative because the cost of the war, in the case of Mexico, is becoming unbearable. Too high for Mexico, Latin America, and the rest of the world. The impact in the economy, on income, on tourism investment, loss of talent, and above all, loss of hope, and 80,000 kids dead in the last 6 years. All this because our neighbor to the north represents such a gigantic consumer market. We must get out of this trap. And here is the opportunity. Now this group here is moving accordingly from words into plans, and from plans into action, and the action in the arena. To play the real game, this group must understand the need to make good, safe, and legal use of these new laws for the benefit of the people and the common good. I am here convinced of the need for change and the search for new avenues in this difficult and unresolved issue. I am here to witness a paradigmatic change. I have too many questions about the implementation of these new laws and regulations and how it will impact our countries and communities. This is an issue of strategic interest and concern around the world. This historic step today is to be observed and evaluated closely by all of us because it is a game changer. Fox Center is an acting think tank, but also an action think tank. That is why we are here.
All right. Thank you for watching. I'm going to feed the crows real quick. That's one of the things that we do here for the community of animals is we feed the crows, and our backyard has become a nursery for baby crows. So do you guys want to keep recording? It'll just take me a couple of minutes. It's not a big deal, but we'll just here. I'm going to pause recording just so that for the moment. All right, back at it. So I really want to honor your questions, Jordan, about like, yeah. And so that took me on a whole journey with President Fox. We did a 4-part international tour culminating in a 3-day symposium in Mexico, right in the heart of the drug war, committing to make criminal drug cartels obsolete. And the drug cartels responded, and it was not pretty. And, we've had to deal with the aftermath of that, including my, having to basically go underground for a bit. And then, figure out our next moves. So when you rattle the cage of multi-billion-dollar interests, right, including criminal interests, as my dad experienced firsthand in the Bay Area, the responses can be violent. And since then, my focus has really shifted to how do we feed everyone, right? I don't know if anyone has ever gotten assassinated for feeding people, though.
I guess Jesus.
Yeah, well, no, it's a good point. And actually, organized crime followed me into my pursuits of feeding people, and we actually got infiltrated and attacked on a couple of occasions. So, in part because of all that, I said, all right, I've got to stop trying to do this with kind of just limited groups. Let's throw it open to collective intelligence, because it's really hard to stamp out the collective intelligence of an entire species. And so our trend has to become more decentralized, more just totally democratic, open, and the press conference is a big part of that. Snack bar, etc. So,
okay.
But so what motivates me? What motivates me is how do we take care of humanity and take care of Mother Earth, That's the big motivation. I'm not really motivated by anything else right now than bringing humanity together, taking care of all people, and saving and healing life on Earth. There's absolutely.
It's quite an ambitious goal. So yeah, I think that's quite a bit on your hands as it is.
Well, but see, it's not just my hand. All of us are coming together
Sure.
around this, and we're forming a global movement. And not just us, but so many different organizations like Kialo, for example. So we're all moving in the same direction. We don't necessarily know about each other, but we're finding each other. And
kind of so basically it's like snapping into place. So like basically as you find each other, it's like these ties are like snapping in place, and you kind of become more and more connected, almost like a cell that's multiplying and then becomes like a giant organism, and it's like this giant moving organism.
That's
it's all moving towards one purpose. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well that's helpful.
Yeah,
to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me welcome Claudia. And Linda's going to pop off. Good to see you, Linda. Come and go anytime. Great to see you always. And Claudia, welcome back, Claudia. We're recording right now, and we're in a great conversation. Hey, Claudia. Claudia is in Oaxaca at the moment. She normally lives in Canada.
Ipolite, Mexico.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful. And we're and by the way, Claudia, Jordan, I think this is Jordan's first time here, and he's got a lot of great questions and comments and ideas. He's in Hungary at the moment. He lives in Hungary, in a village in Hungary. He's American, living in Hungary. His wife's Hungarian. And one thing I wanted to make clear is we actually believe, I believe, that money is a poison. It's actually a toxic, addictive substance. And more generally, I believe that about private property. Generally, I really believe that humanity should be living as a collective, and feeding everyone is, I believe, a huge first step in that direction. So consistent with that, we have no financial model here whatsoever. There's not even a donate button on the website. There's just come and be and participate in the conversation. I believe the most precious commodity on earth right now is people's attention. And I think that most of people's attention right now is stuck in what I refer to as this all-day Monopoly game of individual hoarding, first for individual survival, and then for individual aggrandizement through ego, through
privatization.
Pardon me?
Like privatization, but in every single layer.
Oh yeah,
reality. Okay.
Yeah, and this all fuels separation. This is mine, that's yours. Here's a boundary between us, and I think that's destroying us, and it's destroying the planet. And I think that it's also the root cause of our systematic blindness relative to what we actually need to do in order to save life on Earth. Okay. And the blindness stems out of, like a bunch of 10-year-olds trapped in an all-day Monopoly game where that just becomes all-consuming and they're not thinking about anything else. And, if you imagine walking up to that table of 10-year-olds and saying, hey, there's a neighborhood cleanup that's just about to start, right down the street here. They'd just be like, get away. We're busy here, right? And that is the story of humanity in early 2021. We're trapped in an all-day Monopoly game of individual hoarding for, again, first for individual survival and then for individual aggrandizement. And it is so all-consuming that it prevents us from seeing what's right outside our window, which is a world on fire, a world that is exponentially overheating, and the flames will get us all. The sea level rise will get us all. The pandemics will get us all. The mass extinction. We're the Humpty Dumpty on top of the wall, right? We're the apex predator species that's going to suffer the most in this current wave of mass extinction. But again, we can't even see it, much less talk about it, because we're so trapped in the all-day Monopoly game. And I
But
believe,
I guess a big part of monopoly is the money, and this is kind of, I guess, part of your point is money is integral to this privatization of all life, and maybe if we're all playing the game, which itself is centered around money and fake resources, such they don't even exist. Like monopoly money doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
This is kind of the comparison. Like money doesn't actually exist. It's actually something that keeps us within this game, which is then like everything's burning behind us, but we're still enraptured in the game while basically the world is going to hell. That's kind of what you're saying.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
No. So these views, I mean, obviously, no matter what you do as a human, we're always categorizing. So like it helps me. I don't like to necessarily categorize people or movements, but like you have in order to understand things or grasp things, that's like the nature of reality. You have to have some kind of category of like associations, of where someone's coming from, what exactly is going on. So then my question would be, in all instances, you would say money is something that should be avoided, like in every instance, Jamin?
No. I mean, I'm not saying, hey, like you won't see me go and pull out my stash and set it on fire on camera here.
Okay.
But and I do go to the store, and instead of showing up with a gun, and I show up with money.
Okay.
But so I'm not saying everybody stop using money, but I'm just it's more of a systemic thing, right? So here we are at the wedding on a Saturday night, and we're all dancing the Macarena. I'm still dancing the Macarena. I'm not saying, hey, everyone stop, but in between dances, I'm saying, hey, could we maybe change the music, right? Could we maybe change the game here, right? But in the meantime, I'm still dancing, right? Yes, BJ, are you just dancing, or you want to say? I'm just kidding. Go ahead, BJ.
To chime in here. First, I want to say hello to Claudia because I don't know that we've met. It's good to see you. So welcome. And the other thing is it just brings up a few years ago, Jamin and I met at a Vegan World Conference where we had someone speak on the gift economy. And he's done TED Talks, and so the gift economy, and he doesn't spend money. He goes and gives talks. He stays at people's houses. Everything is given to him, and so he talks about that, and he also talks about sociocracy and
sociocracy, huh?
Yeah. So that's what one of his TED Talks is about.
So would you say this? A lot of members within this group would subscribe to like a sociocracy type of model?
In this group, yes.
Yes, okay.
Or they're open to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and he has a TED Talk, you said?
Yes, and his name is Jacques Nobel.
Jean-Francois Nobel. Jean-Francois Nobel.
Because I know there's a book. I actually was just probably last week looking, because I read so much, like I said, I was just looking at a book by someone, maybe by that name, actually what the name was, Sociocracy, and there was some publication or.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious about sociocracy. I mean, my expertise, as if I'm expert in anything, or if anybody really is, but my focus in life isn't really, I would say, has just recently become on political philosophy. Big philosophy buff, but not super. I guess haven't been there for a long time, in the political realm, and so it is very interesting to me. So if you know anything or if you could recommend resources, I'd be happy on learning about sociocracy.
Well, there's a sociocracy website, and they have classes, and where you can look, and I didn't ever go to one online that was happening then, but I did look at their videos and that, so that's really cool. And the other thing I wanted to tell you about is these are the two books that they're the same one. Okay, well, anyway, I have his other book too, Carbon Yoga and Carbon Dharma. And those are the books that he's going to be using for his class that he mentioned earlier that he's going to be teaching at the Indian University, which everyone can join, but it's pretty, I think it's $300. And one of the parts that he talks about is ahimsa coin economy. So it is an economy that's not based on money. It's based on ahimsa and love. And he's got this beautiful idea of how that works. right now we don't get paid for picking up trash as we go down the street, which I do and other people do. We don't get paid for cleaning up things that need to be done. But if we have a system where those things are included in the good things that happen, and then the money flows, so that you can keep track of, I helped somebody across the street, I did this, I did that. And since it will be an open system, anybody can see you. So all my friends know whether I really went, if I say I did something, then they would know it because they're on the system. Anyway, it's a really fascinating system, which I'm looking forward to, but I don't think it will happen all at once. It'll happen in a community of people who decide, yeah, I'll join in.
Like a commune?
Yeah, virtual.
Like a virtual commune. Uh-huh.
Cryptocurrency.
I mean, I've lived in some communes. I mean, it's interesting. Wow. Okay. No, I mean,
yeah. So this
definitely an interesting, like,
yeah,
it's good for experimentation, I guess. Perhaps.
Yeah. And so that would be what is it when you get hearts and points on virtually on like
a merit system?
The merit system, right? And if you like the book, you give it points. So like for instance, because even though I've never met any of you before, if you came to the town and needed a place to stay, I would immediately know to trust you because we've given each other points. We know who we can trust, or I would help you find something, or you would help me, that sort of thing. So you have a society that's online that you give points to, and then that is connected to a monetary, well, no, it's not a monetary system, but it's a coin that comes to you. So everybody is getting paid every hour. I won't be able to explain it as well as Dr. Rao can, but I just wanted to mention that there are some systems that are being thought about and developed so that we don't have to have a monetary system, and that can, because they're open, you won't have the underground where you can't see, oh, there's child pornography, or, oh, there's things that we don't believe in. I don't believe in money going to slaughterhouses. So once you agree and decide, yeah, I think I'd like to be in this system, I trust these people, I want to try it out, then you get the HIMSA coin. I don't know. It's pretty. Am I doing okay on describing that? You've heard of it too, Jamin, right?
Yeah. Yes,
it sounds like something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just saying, it sounds like something that Muhammad Yunus, are you familiar with him? Muhammad Yunus would do. Yeah, I mean, he has a couple of books about. He's an economist, PhD economist. He's a guy from Bangladesh who kind of invented microcurrency, which is like these loans to the poor, which I find very fascinating.
Yes, yeah.
And this is kind of almost like a step beyond, perhaps what he would recommend. So it's almost like going in a certain direction that I don't know exactly what the name of that direction would be, or what that telos would be, but it sounds like it's going in the same direction as this Yunus would suggest. And I mean, yeah, I haven't heard about this before, so that's quite interesting.
And that'll be discussed at the last weekend in January. One of the tracks is the new economy. What can that look like? And you've probably heard of the donut economics.
Is this also like kind of around like the Green New Deal type topics, or no?
The Green New, no. This donut economics was done by somebody named Kay, and it's all about feeding the world and.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
But anyway, that will be discussed in that track of the economy on January 30 and 31. Yeah. I hope you get to come, Claudia. At January 30 and 31, Vegan World 2026, Convergence.
Oh, I heard of those dates. I'm kind of day-to-day right now.
Yeah.
I have plans starting on the 12th for about 10 days. And then I have no idea what I'm doing after that. I don't even know how long I'm staying here.
Oh, And where are you?
I'm in Cipolite, Mexico.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm on the
It's very
Pacific
nice.
Coast.
yeah.
And I think we're going to go and visit the west coast of Mexico at some point in time. And then where I'm staying, he'd like to go and see Guatemala, where my family is. So I still might make it down there. So I'm kind of going with the flow.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
All right. Well, we are recording. And by the way, Claudia, when you were in the waiting room, did it say that, did it have a message that we're recording? Okay. I thought it would show that. Anyway, are you cool with recording? Everybody cool with recording? Okay. And by the way, Claudia, BJ, you're both regulars here. BJ is kind of more of a morning person. Claudia is more often in the evening here. And Claudia normally lives in Canada. So I was a little surprised that the two of you hadn't met, which is kind of interesting.
I think I've seen a couple of times, but just in quick passing, because like I said, she's during the day, I'm in the evening.
Yeah.
You're right. Yes.
Maybe at one of Shannon's things the other evening.
Well,
No? Okay, then maybe not.
we also have water people meeting here. We have SOS Amazonia meeting here. Yeah, so I know, I think you do look familiar to me too now.
Not such a nice background usually. That's what's throwing everybody off.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about, as I guess Jamin would say, I don't know if he coined this word, the Zoomosphere. That sounds like something you coined.
Yeah.
But okay. That's a nice one.
I actually have all the domain names for zoomosphere.com.
Wow.
Net,
That's a great way to start a revolution. Usually it starts by changing the language.
Exactly.
Smart guy. Anyway, yeah, no, I think it's cool because the more familiar, it allows a space where people can become very familiar with each other across all kinds of different cultures. And I think that is like a breeding ground for empathy and for understanding and not hatred. So that's very cool. So I'm happy to be able to be familiar with people from all around the world. That's kind of cool, actually.
No, it's super cool. And at the press conference, we literally had people from 6 continents. We're trying to recruit some penguins from Antarctica to join us for the next one so that we'll have all 7.
Yeah.
We literally had.
We'll have to evolve a little faster.
Exactly. But we literally had all 6 continents, basically, where there are people. They were all here at the press conference. So we're building just all kinds of bridges. And so, we started with the 24-hour block party every Friday, Saturday. And then we had also had the Solution Club happening every Tuesday. And then at one point, a number of us who are here and are regulars here came through the harmonic convergence that happened last year. Claudia, did you come through the harmonic convergence?
I missed it, and I was just at the end of it. That's when I came in here, just at the end of it.
Okay, super cool. So both Marco and Claudia came here. So there was this awesome, I don't know, week-long.
Yeah, I missed it.
10 days.
10 days.
We need a repeat. I missed it.
Right.
Well, it's all on Facebook Live. You can go to Mark's website and watch them.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
But anyway,
Wait, Jay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, maybe this is a bit off topic, but I was really interested in trying to bring your idea more to fruition, Jamin, about what you're saying. Because right now in my mind, it's probably at a stage of a seedling. And I would like to have more clarity so that because it becomes a fruits. And specifically what I'm talking about is your idea on money. And I'm just curious with how you manage that. Because I think from what I know in my seedling understanding of where you are right now, I would have similar views perhaps of money. But I'm also curious about like what that looks like. Like, for example, you have money, like you're being paid somehow, I assume maybe, or like maybe have you taken the moment where like you're almost like fully self-sufficient, like you have a self-sufficient sphere around you, or I'm just curious about where you are there practically.
And having worked directly with the then richest person in the world, Bill Gates, you would think that, somebody with over $100 billion would be doing like Claudia's doing, chilling in Oaxaca, pour me another margarita, I'm gonna have some more tamales, but it's the opposite. And Bill Gates has no peace. He barely sleeps. He's always working, and now he's in a total tailspin because he's been passed up as the richest person on earth. And he's just trying to regain the #1 spot. His life is not about life. His life is about winning the all-day Monopoly game, because in his world, the only people he's really aware of, right, are now Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and the other people vying for the #1 spot. So he's in a panic. And and that's why he's investing in these just ridiculous real estate projects, buying whole swaths of desert to build whole new cities and all that. I mean, it's
Dubai.
just
New Dubai.
Arizona, right? He's buying
like a new Dubai.
The new Dubai, exactly. And it isn't going to help the world building another city in the desert, for heaven's sake. And so so how do we liberate ourselves from money? And here's the strategy. Here, in fact, let me I've got to get my other computer connected so I can screen share some images. It'll just take me a couple of minutes, but in parallel, the basic strategy is first feed everyone. Feed everyone. Well, how on earth do we feed everyone? And that's what I'll show some slides on. But do it in a way that grows exponentially, so we can literally get to a state where everyone in the world is eating 3 meals a day, well nourished, etc. That's right around the corner, and that's what we were talking about earlier today with Dr. Silas Rao, and the progress is very exciting. But so imagine we reach a point where everyone is fed. We're feeding everyone every single day, in an organized, collective way. And given COVID, the way I see that coming to pass is by delivering the food to everyone's home. Here, I'll put my screen share, my image on the screen. Unless you have non-video participants hid, you can see. Do you see the community cafe image there on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something we pioneered in Southern California in 2015, which is feeding everyone for free. Just here's the community cafe. Everyone's welcome. Come eat, take food home, whatever you need, just free food for all. And it was enormously popular and everyone loved it. Now in COVID times, we're in a different realm, and where the imperative is to deliver food to people's homes so that they don't have to go out to grocery stores, to supermarkets, which is probably one of the main vectors of spreading COVID. Is you have hundreds of people all under one roof, all, passing each other in tight aisles. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And so we've come up with this model lately, which Dr. Silas Rao is now implementing in Arizona, as we were talking about earlier. And I'm part of a food consortium here on Whidbey Island, where I'm promoting that we do this here. So, and let me just share these slides real quick to give you the idea. All right, so sharing screen. Claudia, you taking off? Oh, okay. All right, Claudia, come and go as you wish. You know this, the drill.
I'll see you guys later on. I got to pop off for a bit.
Yeah, no problem. All righty. Take care, Claudia. We'll see you soon, sister. Take care. So here, so Food Healers is the thing we're doing here every Friday. And so I've started Food Healers of Whidbey Island. The basic idea is mass produce really top-notch, absolutely delicious, nutritious, plant-based stews, and of different varieties depending on the geography, the culture, etc. and along with an appropriate complex carbohydrate side dish, whether it's brown rice or bread or tortillas or potatoes. We buy the raw materials in bulk: lentils, beans, rice, legumes, carrots, potatoes. Here's lentils from Canada, which if you buy them at the source, 6.5 cents a pound. If you buy them by the 40-ton truckload. So the food is incredibly inexpensive, ridiculously inexpensive. I'm waiting for the screen share to catch up here. I had to do a little hotspot here. Come on, baby. All right. It'll catch up. Oh, okay. Yeah. One second. I'll be right back.
1001.
Hey, listen, I've got to go. It's been great meeting you, Jordan. Good to see you again, Marco. And then I will be back again tonight to hear again.
All right, BJ, great to see you. Great to see you.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you soon. Thanks, BJ. All right, so my screen share is working good here. So the idea is we buy all these inputs extremely cost effectively, buying it at the source directly from the farms with money for starters. And we then mass produce. So like, here's a picture of an industrial rice cooker to feed a whole army or something. And so we mass cook that which needs to be cooked. We don't cook that which shouldn't be cooked, like most of the produce, right? So the basic steps are mass cook that which needs to be cooked. As soon as it's cooked, we cool it. We refrigerate it down to close to 0 degrees centigrade, close to freezing, but we don't actually freeze it. We don't freeze it solid. So cooked rice, cooked beans, cooked potatoes, everything that needs to be cooked, it's then cooled. We then blend in the produce that shouldn't be cooked, right? Until the very last moment when the stew is ready to be served. Then you heat it up. And at that point, the produce gets a little bit of cooking, but not much. But anyway, you blend all the cooked ingredients plus the non-cooked ingredients. You blend it all cold into the stew. You deliver the stew in bulk. I use a milk truck as an example. We have the technology to deliver fluids near freezing, but not frozen solid. We deliver it in bulk, and there's the inside of a milk truck, for example. And the idea is to deliver it directly to the communities in bulk and dispense it in bulk, where you bring your own container. So we completely eliminate packaging. We eliminate single-use packaging and we eliminate multi-use packaging. We eliminate packaging, right? We deliver it in, so like bring your own pot, bring your own bucket, bring your own whatever, and we'll fill you up. Simple, really simple. And that way we eliminate people having to make multiple trips every week to some grocery store. We bring you the food. And if we can do it in a way that's super cool. So here's like a Tesla truck pulling a space age trailer. Imagine we've got one of those roaming around West Los Angeles, right? It would be such a spectacle. And it would look like, I don't know, something that landed from a spaceship or something, food from the future or something like that. But let's call it food for the future. And so the vision is feed everyone. Now, once we start doing this, the donations are going to pour in, and we're going to have the funding to do it all over. We're going to have the donations that will come will exceed the cost of running the operation. I'm convinced of that, because we can do this so efficiently, incredibly efficiently. Can you imagine buying lentils for 6.5 cents a pound, dry lentils? A pound of lentils cooks a whole big pot that you can feed a whole family. Raw material cost 6.5 cents. Similar economics with potatoes, whole grain rice, et cetera, et cetera. So we can actually feed everyone incredibly efficiently. And and again, I believe the donations will come pouring in because people will just suddenly get it that, wow, we can actually feed everyone. We don't have to have starving kids here, there, and everywhere, starving homeless people, starving whoever. And there's some, you know, being vegan yourself, you know, the passion of veganism. There's so much passion that vegans bring to the conversation. And when they see that this is all plant-based, they're going to be pouring in as volunteers, as donors, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to feed everyone. And once everyone is fed, and it's like, regardless of whether you work, don't work, you're retired, you just want to watch Netflix and smoke weed, whatever your story, I don't care. If you're a living, breathing human being, here, free food, eat up, right? That's the message. So once we've solved the food problem, a much easier problem to solve is the shelter problem, because food you have to deliver constantly. Shelter, once you've erected the shelter, it's good to go for, you know, decades if you built it right. And then every few decades you re-roof. Not a huge deal. So imagine that we feed everyone. We've given everyone shelter, free health care for all, and so on. Suddenly, your average human being has no need for money in practical terms, right? And so we can actually make money obsolete by removing money from the game. Imagine we played a different board game where there was no money, there was no hoarding, right? Imagine, you know, life becomes a sing-along rather than a game of accumulation and domination and charging people rent, right? You know, I mean, it's just, it doesn't have to be this way. We've gotten into a really bad track. You know, somewhere 10,000 years ago, somebody had the brilliant idea of doing totalitarian agriculture and building a fence around it. And ever since then, it's become this incessant game of endless hoarding and accumulation and domination, all the way to slavery and just horrific abuses. So we're talking about creating a new game, but the first step is feeding everyone. And the first step for that is what we were talking about this morning, which is these local projects that we're doing on food healers. And through this community right here, we can bring these different projects together, and through collective intelligence, we can just share open source style, right? Just share what's working, what's not working. And using our collective intelligence, we can perfect these models, perfect the logistics, perfect the marketing, perfect the you know, gathering of donations, perfect the recipes, perfect, and implement all around the world. And that's a story. And as a story, you know, and again, then the press conference is a part of that, spreading the story, spreading the message, and inviting the world to the conversation. So it's all tied together. And then getting back to an earlier point I was making, once we liberate humanity from this brutal all-day monopoly game, that's when we can finally look out the window and see what a beautiful world it is out there and what a beautiful world it can be.
So
yeah.
So Jamin, you would say, and also I see that there's this kind of interplay with what we're doing now and the recording process. So like, is there a specific reason why why we might choose not to record some things and why we choose to record certain things?
Yeah.
Is that because what's the topic?
It's very simple. We strive to make this a safe space for newcomers. And if people come into a meeting where it's recording and going to be published, and that's just a barrier, because not everybody wants to be recorded. Not everybody knows what's this for, what's this all about, you know, privacy and all that.
Okay.
So, I mean, ideally we'd record everything, you know, from one perspective, but we also want people to be comfortable. So the general flow of this is, if we're recording here in the main Zoom room, then when new people come in, we pause recording and say, hello, welcome. Hey, by the way, we were recording and then you showed up. Are you okay recording? And then we continue recording. Or we simply don't record here in the main room if people are just hanging out. And then it's like, if you want to record, we've got breakout rooms and you can record in there.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I was just curious about that. All right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, then Jamin, maybe I'm not. Implicit in your argument, it seems like, if I can understand the issues and the conclusions in the argument, in my mind, maybe in other words, we go something like, there's an issue where perhaps humans, like underlining what you're saying, humans are dependent on like this system, like money and other things, and then it also comes down to like how resources are being managed. So it's almost like a communist or like Marxist thought, or something about like different like power struggles or something among like people with people with the resources and people without the resources, and like is this kind of playing in here somewhere? Like, would you say that your theory is influenced by like some kind of communistic or Marxist thought? Or
it probably is. I haven't read very much of that thought, so I don't really know too much about it.
Okay.
But I'm sure.
I'm trying to locate what on this idea map, kind of like where you're coming from here, so I can get some like bearings. My compass is kind of like, okay. I mean, yeah, but there's this idea of like dependency, right? And money is definitely a huge thing that like it's basically fake, right? And during human evolution, people didn't use paper money, like they use perhaps like an exchange of services, for example, in certain communities, or they use maybe different methods of like social currency and like in different ways. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and basically food is like, so basically it's like the telos, or like the goal is like to get people like not dependent on like a system. Is it like kind of like decentralization? Is that like kind of like the telos or the goal, or that's just a means by which people are able to be self-sufficient, or like be part of a community? We can get our priorities straight instead of having to focus perhaps on like things that seem to be not what humans should be focusing on. We can focus on things like flourishing and noticing the world around us and its beauty. And we need to get away from that. Is that the telos, or is this kind of where you're going?
Yeah, by getting, fundamentally, my goal is that we change the game, transform the mode of production of the global economy, from a mode that's focused on hoarding and accumulation ad nauseum, with no limit, boundless hoarding, to change it to a game where it's really about co-creating and self-actualization and community actualization and healing, right? Where, just like I feed the crows and we feed all the little songbirds and chipmunks and raccoons and anyone who's hungry, really, that we transform the world into this wonderland that is our birthright, the birthright of all living creatures, that we live in harmony and we care for each other. And this whole idea of exchange of services, it's based on a belief, a philosophy in scarcity, that there's really not enough, and therefore if you want something of mine, you got to give me something, or otherwise I'm not going to give you what I got unless you give me some of you got, man. And we're in this game of give and take, or exchange, and it's just, as far as it's just the wrong game. I mean, it's like, imagine we went on a camping trip, the three of us, you, me, and Marco, right? And Marco brings the bread and I bring the beans and rice, and you bring the candles or whatever. I mean, do we really want the whole camping trip to be about, all right, man, if I'm going to give you some of my bread, you got to give me some of those beans and rice, man, and maybe Jordan might not even share the light of the candle with us if we don't, I mean, do we really want the camping trip to go like that? Can't we just fucking eat, smoke weed, sing songs, and play the guitar, and then go on beautiful day hikes? Can we just, life should be a fucking camping trip. It shouldn't be this.
Like for everybody. So it's like this idea of
everybody.
equality, like that's kind of underlying this. Like there should be equality, perhaps, or
Right.
Like, so would you say like hierarchy is something to be avoided, or just maybe the hierarchy needs to be like transformed, like maybe many sub hierarchies, like almost like a decentralization where there's so many hierarchies. It's like everybody has their own place within this system, where it's like it's not centralized. And I mean,
So,
is this, so I just is interesting. I'm just trying to, if it's okay, I'm just trying to prod and understand these things.
no, it's not just okay. It's invited. It's absolutely invited.
All right.
So are you done formulating your question? You ready for me to
Yes.
answer? Okay. So let me answer by way of example. Okay. And so the example is precisely the food healers example that I've been showing, where food is just distributed to everyone as a public service. Let me back up and give a different example, which is public sewage, right? So, if you go to a park and you want to use a bathroom, right? You don't have to swipe your credit card or PayPal or anything like that. You just go sit on the toilet, you do your thing, and at the end, you hit a button, it's flush, right? You flush the toilet. It's just a public good. You don't even think about it. The idea of monetizing it is kind of ridiculous. But there was a time when public sewage did not exist. I think London was the first city to implement public sewage. Not a big surprise. It was the first big city. But what people used to do was they'd poop in a pot and throw it out the window, right? And but then it just became unbearable. There's just poop everywhere. And then someone had the bright idea of doing sewage. And at first it seemed ridiculous. Oh, you're never going to do it. You're never going to get rid of poop on the streets. It's just something we live with. It's an unfortunate part of life, just like hunger and poverty and homelessness today. It just exists, and you kind of look away, but it's just an unfortunate part of life. Well, obviously, as history has shown, now we've got public sewage everywhere. It's something we expect, right? It would be unthinkable to create a new city. Imagine Bill Gates is creating a new city, but he says, no, there's not going to be public sewage. It's kind of absurd. So, and public sewage, what is it? It's stuff flowing from people's homes to a centralized place where it gets dealt with. The flow of food that I'm imagining is kind of like that, but in reverse. There's a centralized place where we prepare all this food, and then it flows out to different communities by truck in this case. I suppose we could pipe it, but it doesn't seem like the best way. But anyway, so we truck it around, and it's just here, food for everyone as a public good. And if we can do that for food, for shelter, for healthcare, et cetera, for all the basics of life, they're just public goods. And then, but then how do you incentivize people to drive the trucks, man? Well, there's some people that just like to do that. And since they've got all their needs met, there's only so much Netflix you can watch and so much ganja you can smoke until you get kind of tired of it. And it's like, hey, I want to do something for the community. So we'll just have all these volunteer roles out there, and some of which will be quite coveted. I'm sure some people just really dig driving that Tesla truck around and dispensing stew, to people. And so it becomes, we develop a culture of contribution, of volunteerism. And all of that can be achieved in a world with money, but it could also be achieved in a world without money. So, but what I'm really talking about are making the basic needs of life public goods, just like sewage and public parks, right?
Okay.
So I look at it from a very practical utilitarian standpoint. Now, it does have profound philosophical and spiritual implications. Imagine being born into a world where it's just everything is just given. All the needs of life are given. And, and hey, and what's life about? Well, it's about sharing, and it's about contributing. I mean, just growing up in a different culture like that. And then life can become this awesome camping trip where just out of love and gratitude, people will contribute to the good of the whole. So think about intentional communities where that it just happens. And we've had beautiful examples of that throughout history, including in the United States in recent decades. And a gentleman who used to be a regular here, but haven't seen him in a few months, Dharmendra. He lived in an intentional community for a number of years back in Oregon, back in, I don't know, the 70s or 80s or something. And it just worked. Everyone loved it. Life was beautiful. Everyone ate together. There was so many cool projects to work on. And it just works. And so I think in very utilitarian terms, very practical terms rather, how do we do this? And so food healers is the obvious first step. And I believe that will precipitate a spiritual transformation in humanity as people wake up to and live in a world that is a very generous, very compassionate world where everyone gets to eat. That's just taken care of, right?
Yeah, no, this is really bringing light. So now my seedling understanding is more like a sapling, perhaps, and growing towards perhaps I'm a slow learner or something, but yeah. So it sounds like in the language you use, your telos or your vision that you're moving towards is some type of like where it could be comparable to a camping trip for everybody, and kind of maybe the philosophical undergrounding of that is this idea that life should be about fun and excitement and people being able to have perhaps freedom to do as they wish and not be limited by unnecessary factors like poverty and lack of food, and this shouldn't even exist, and so that kind of is like equality. And then the conclusion is we can get there and we can drive the world there if everybody has their needs met. So basically, like if everybody has their needs met, you're suggesting that would kind of organically produce a place in which people will desire to volunteer for those things which perhaps should have been or were incentivized before with capitalism, perhaps, or like these other things, because their needs are met. They don't necessarily need anything. They're not, but it, like kind of like the goodness of the human heart will kind of come out and volunteer for these things that need to be done. And food is where to start, I guess, assuming because that's like the most basic human need. And if people don't have food, then they basically like they die. And so that's kind of like that's like somewhere where you start. So you start with food, you start with shelter, because these are very basic human needs. And so if you can meet those, you basically knock out like 80% of it or something, perhaps like a large section of human need. Is that kind of like am I getting in the right direction of what you're trying to say there, Jim?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So basically, like your fundamental axiom there, one would be like, yeah, like if everybody, and this is kind of like where you build your vision off of, if everybody has their needs met, then kind of prosperity will spring up from that. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay. Yeah, because I guess like maybe in capitalism, one main axiom would be that almost like the opposite, like, not quite the opposite. That's maybe too reductionistic, but something like people need to be incentivized. People naturally are beasts, whereas like unless there's some kind of selfish incentive, like we capitalism kind of views man as a selfish animal that needs to be incentivized to do something, or he won't necessarily naturally be inclined towards certain altruistic ends. But it sounds like what you're saying is maybe that's not right. Maybe we should question that, and it'd be good to question that. And you said that, hey, here's one reason. Like, well, one reason is that one supporting reason is, hey, there's communities all over the world where this has really worked. Even you mentioned one like in Oregon or other places you were talking about, and this is just working really well. I mean, I guess I could add my own kind of experience in communes upon that as well, because I mean, I also lived in communes. I guess then what that naturally makes my mind lead to is like how scalable would that be? Like so this is working like in small states, but like would this be something that could be scalable? I feel like this is almost like a cousin of communism, in one sense. And I feel like based off of what I saw happen to communism, what happens is human nature kind of kicks in when it becomes centralized, and it's like then it's this crazy mass murder, and what wanted to happen actually just didn't happen. and it became this kind of almost, it was too utopian. So like it almost couldn't find embodiment. Like it was like the spirit roaming around, and it almost like it couldn't find actual embodiment because it was almost too spirit, right? And I guess that's kind of like my question, and that's not like a challenge. It's more of like me trying to process this. I'm really curious about how, because you're a very smart guy, and I'm sure you've kind of thought through this quite extensively. So how would you kind of conceptualize this or answer that?
Okay, so let's talk about bringing it, grounding it in reality, making it happen, going from spirit to actual. So again, I bring it back to food, which is the most fundamental human need that constantly needs to be addressed. And so let me tell you about this is a true story that happened in San Francisco. And there was a gal working in some office in San Francisco, and she was just inspired one day to bring a big box of donuts to the office and put it in the, in the kitchen of that floor of the office. And, free donuts for everyone. And, by the way, if you want to contribute to the donut fund, here's the jar, right? And so people could throw money in the jar if they wanted to, but it wasn't required. And so, someone feeling generous, coming in on a happy Friday, they might just take a donut and put a $5 bill in the jar. But of course, if you buy a big 2 dozen box of donuts, your cost per donut is probably 50 cents or whatever, right? So a curious thing happened. At the end of the day, she goes back to, dispose of the box of donuts. No big surprise. It was empty. All the donuts had been consumed. And she, gathered the money in the jar and counted it up. And the amount of money in the jar exceeded the cost of the donuts. Well, that's interesting. What's going on here? Right? I actually turned a profit. And then she got the inspiration to turn it into a little business. And so she went, and so, long story short, she went around to multiple offices in San Francisco and said, hey, can I, drop off a box of donuts in a tip jar? Right? And so she would drop off boxes of donuts in a little glass jar, donate here. And obviously, if there was some office where there's a kleptomaniac who would not just take the donuts, but also clean out the money at the end of the day, well, she would learn, all you have to do is just keep a little list, make a little spreadsheet of donuts delivered and revenue. And for the ones where there was a kleptomaniac, she simply wouldn't go back, right? That got crossed off the list. But for the offices that, where people were generous, she would keep delivering donuts and making a small profit, multiplied by a whole bunch of offices. So it proved my fundamental thesis, which is that if you're generous with people, people will be generous right back, right? But if you also think about it from a business perspective, right? If she had had someone there with a cash register, a credit card swiper, it's, whatever, $20 an hour plus insurance, plus workman's comp, the expenses would be through the roof. And so by taking away all that crap and creating essentially an automated system, she was able to bring costs way, way down and turn a profit. So now if we apply, people use donut economics, it's been popularized for something else, but for me, that's the real donut economics, is that story. And so if we apply that to plant-based stew, and we simply go around to the neighborhood, see, it starts with an act of generosity and stepping out on a limb.
Sure.
And if we start with just donating food to everyone in bulk, in volume, obviously people are going to be grateful. And some people will express that gratitude with donations, including some wealthy people who say, wow, this is freaking awesome. And all you have to do is look at the statistics. Crime will go down, right? Medical costs will go down because, there's no better preventative medicine than feeding people good food, right?
It seems, yeah, like there's part of that seems intuitive. I mean, like if you've read Robert Cilia, I always massacre his name, but he's this persuasion expert. He wrote a book called Influence. And obviously my work has to do with that. And he delineates the 6 main, very scientifically verified aspects of influence. And one of them is reciprocity. Reciprocity, there you go. And so like, this is very intuitive, like throughout all of human development, where it's like, actually this exists in every single human society. So like in one sense, it's like very intuitive. And it's like, but in the next sense, it's almost like, but really, will it work like that always, like in that sense, you know? I mean, because there's always this idea, I guess, in every single system, no matter whether it's capitalism or communism or like economics or whatever, there's going to be people who are just, who won't go necessarily along with the main philosophy of the system, right? There's some, like, be gaps in every single, and all the assumptions, you know, that we make, no matter what kind of system we try to dream up of. And so I'm just trying to imagine, you know, how this would, like, because there's definitely, like, I feel like it'd be like almost extremely easy to manipulate this kind of system if someone didn't necessarily have this same feeling towards somebody, you know, of reciprocity. I feel like it could be very dangerous as well. Like someone, it's easily taken advantage of and destroyed. I almost feel like, and I'm just, it seems like to me when I think about the solutions, like, you know, how can we get to where you're suggesting? It seems like this is going to take like, one, I myself having kind of like, I'm having a trouble seeing how it's almost realistic, you know, like we're talking about, like, a spirit kind of entering into a body and becoming embodied reality. I see that example you gave. Then it's like, that's one example. And there's so many maybe counter examples you could give, right? Of like, well, hey, this also happened. And so I see truth in what you're saying, but I feel like there'd have to be some kind of like giant re-education program, though. There'd have to be like some giant, yeah, I guess what you're saying, I could have to, yeah, okay. Yeah, there'd have to be some giant, as well, like many small experiments, I guess. And that's what you're, I guess, trying to aim at, like many small experiments in different places to show people like, hey, this is actually happening here, here, and here, and here with success. And then I guess you'd have to try to scale that up. Like, okay, now that we have these different communities here, here, and here, let's try to connect them all through like some kind of centralized system and see if that works. And then like maybe try to like expand. So it's almost like maybe that's kind of one model you would suggest. And so it sounds like what you're also trying to do is have people to try this out. And almost like the proof is in the pudding, and then people should okay, yeah, and then the people.
I mean, so
Yeah.
if I can cut to the chase, because I've actually thought about this quite a lot. But,
No, it sounds like it, yeah.
But go ahead. Whenever you're ready, I'll cut to the chase.
Go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, so you know, we could debate ad nauseum. Imagine we actually did this, like in the city of Los Angeles. We just did it, right? We stopped debating for a few weeks and actually said, okay, let's actually do this. We can always stop it later and go back to debating. But what if we actually just did it, right? And so here we are delivering food to all these neighborhoods. And yeah, there's a donation slot on the side of the truck. Feel free to throw money in there if you like it. And there's also a place to send a check and get a tax write-off if you're into that too. And we just did it. And we, in addition to doing it, we did it in a way that would attract attention, like with the Tesla truck and the space age trailer and all that good stuff, right? And we made it a thing. We made it a story in LA, you know, the media capital of the world. And I'll put the Tesla truck back up on the screen just for fun. And you literally see this configuration driving down Sunset Boulevard, right? And it's like, whoa, holy shit. Yeah. What's that all about? And then, you know, and then likewise in parallel, we have occasionally a press conference like this with, you know, a prominent public figure saying, hello, this is obvious. We need to feed everyone. We need to get rid of hunger. This is working, you know, get with the program. You could imagine that story spreading, and sure, there will be, I guarantee you, there will be opposition. There will be people saying this, it's communism, that's communist. But you know, to the extent that there's passionate opposition like that, I don't know if you ever heard the expression, there's no such thing as negative publicity, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
When President Vicente Fox and I did that big press conference in Seattle, which was became the front page story on the Seattle Times the very next morning. Here, I think I've even got an image of that up here somewhere. There we go. Seattle Times front page. Okay. There. Big plan, but few details. Ex-Mexican president praises Shively's pot effort. Seattle Times, next morning. Full
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. That brought a lot of opposition, a lot of, oh my God, shame on them. Who do they think they are? Da, 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 da. But all that added fuel to the fire. And
yeah.
And so, you know, and we took that fuel and that fire and we took it on the road and did an international tour. And one of the things that caused was because he was a former head of state of our neighbor to the south, the second most populous country in the continent after the United States, and our biggest trading partner, that went straight to President Barack Obama's desk. And he directed Eric Holder to get on it, his attorney general. And within 3 months, the Obama administration published a set of 10 points saying, we're giving you the green light to proceed under these 10 conditions. That's what.
Well, that makes sense. No, so it sounds like it's more of like maybe like a social sector solution. Like at first, what you're doing is suggesting almost like a social business, where it's like a Muhammad Yunus kind of thing. Where
Muhammad Yunus, he was actually at the Fox Center in Mexico.
Okay.
On one of my visits, you know, so what he did, I heard his story. He got so he was an economics professor, again, philosophizing, talking this, that. He finally got frustrated, went on the street, went to one of these poor people and said, what do you need? Well, I just need some capital so I can get a wheelbarrow and a couple of chickens or whatever they needed. He reached into his pocket, lent them the money, and he got paid back. And he said, wait a second, we can scale this up. So he scaled it up, and the rest is history. So just like Muhammad Yunus, the point is, let's just do it. And do a pilot project, do a press conference, share it with the world. And if Los Angeles is doing it, and crime is down, and healthcare costs are down, emergency services costs are down, police calls are down, and all the bad things are down and the good things are up, what city would not want to have this implemented? And again, if per donut economics, if it's profitable, right? Obviously, we don't do it so some sociopath can milk out the profits, because then their tendency will be to squeeze out the quality and jack up the costs and whatever. You know, I mean, if we do it in just in a purely benevolent way, right? And we keep integrity. You said, oh, I can see ways that they would get corrupted and all that. Okay, well, what if the organization that did it with integrity and built a brand around it with integrity, then spread the model, right? And maintained the integrity of the system so that it's not controlled by some greedy sociopath.
So like creating like an institution, perhaps, like, for example, like the America is kind of like, you could say, an institution where there's checks and balances, so that the institution is beyond one individual's bad will. And so maybe if you create a certain thing, a similar thing with what you're saying, I guess, institution where it's like, this institution is perhaps bigger than any group of men's bad will, and the institution's goodwill could survive the attacks of maybe like self-interest in such a way that it wouldn't compromise your suggestion. Would that be something maybe that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, that makes sense. I mean,
you know, if I were in charge of it, you know, well, hey, we've got rules, we've got standards.
Well, then it'll be good, right?
I mean, you know.
And actually, one second, Jim, I think I have about 5 minutes here. I need to call somebody, but I actually would like to come back if you're still here. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to pause recording.